Hey everyone, welcome to Careers Out There. I'm Mark Luber, and I recently sat down with Ken Ballen, who's the author of this great new book of nonfiction, Terrorists in Love, The Real Lives of Islamic Radicals. And I asked Ken to talk to us about writing a nonfiction book and getting a deal as a nonfiction book author, so that way we could help all you guys who are trying to do the same. We also talked about the book. Ken is a former federal prosecutor and congressional investigator who helped handle the Iran-Contra hearings and served on several other congressional committees as well. Ken traveled overseas in writing this book to Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, and he sat down with over 100 terrorists to interview them and learn what makes them tick. It's really interesting stuff. So we talked about both those things, being a nonfiction author and this excellent book. Here's how it went. So Ken, as a nonfiction author, tell us about how you go about getting a book deal, and if you could take us from having an idea to actually having a book on the shelves. What's involved?
Well, I think it's different for every person. My idea, the book kind of wrote itself. I was out doing research in the field. I conducted more than 100 interviews with Islamic radicals throughout the Muslim world. And 6 of the stories that I came across from 6 different people were so compelling, changed everything that I thought I knew, that I felt I had to put them down. And so the book kind of wrote itself. From that, Mark, what I did was I contacted every nonfiction author I knew, including Peter Bergen, who ended up writing the foreword to my book. And Peter is the first Westerner to ever interview Osama bin Laden, and he's really written the definitive story of Osama bin Laden. And he wrote the foreword to my book. He introduced me to his agent. I contacted other nonfiction authors I knew who introduced me to their agents. And I presented my idea to the various agents. And you need to get an agent first before you go to a publisher. That's the way it's done in the publishing industry. And basically through writing a lot of different emails and talking to a lot of different people, I eventually came across my agent, who was absolutely thrilled with the idea of the book. And that's how we formed the relationship. And from the agent, it went to the publisher.
So people watching who want to put out a nonfiction book, should they first write the book, or should they take the idea and be pitching that through an agent?
Well, usually the way it's done is they pitch the idea to an agent, and then they pitch it to a publisher, and they have a proposal before writing the book. Because, for instance, it took me over 3 years to write my book. But I give you that introduction only because my book was really very different. It came from the stories. It kind of wrote itself. So I felt what I was told changed everything I thought I knew. So it made me write the book, if you will, rather than me writing the book. So I went to an agent at a later stage. A lot of the book had already been written by that point. But usually you go before writing the book. That's the usual customary procedure.
Okay. And so people should just network their butts off to get to these agents and
That's right.
present their ideas.
That's right. That's right.
Is there any database or list of agents that you know of that people should look for?
There are agent lists. There are books about how to get an agent. There are all kinds of resources online about it. And you can query agents. Many agents have websites, and they tell you how you can send a query to them with an idea. So you don't necessarily have to know them. You can just approach them without knowing them. I think like everything else, like getting a job, like anything else, to the extent that you work through networks that you know, people tend to be somewhat more responsive. But agents do have websites, and you can reach out for them directly.
Good to know. Okay, so you encourage everyone with an idea who really wants to be writing and getting this out there. Just get it done, go for it, network.
I'm not sure I encourage them because it's a very difficult process. You really have, that's why I talked about the book writing itself for me. You really have to have the book in your gut in a compelling way, because the writing profession is not terribly remunerative. It's very difficult to get a book published, and there are lots of obstacles. So I don't recommend it for the faint of heart, to be honest.
Okay. Those with strong iron stomachs and wills, they're the ones.
Those who feel like they can't do anything else and are willing to give up 3, 4, 5 years of your life to a project where you may not make a lot of money off of it and you may not get a lot of rewards, go for it. But you really have to have the fire in your belly. It's a little bit like running for president. Unless you really want it and want to put up with all the humiliation, you shouldn't do it.
I like that analogy. Good analogy there. So I'm holding up the book here again. It's, excuse me, Terrorists in Love, The Real Lives of Islamic Radicals. Tell us this, Ken. What is it that you want the American people to take away from this book, and what is your goal with this book?
Well, the book is not like any other book about terrorism. It's a book that tells the life stories, very intimate, from childhood through growing up, through relationships of 6 individuals who went to fight for holy war, jihad, who are terrorists. And it tells their intimate stories from their point of view. So it's not a policy book. It's not an analytical, dry kind of thing. It is really very intimate, very personal, getting behind the scenes. Really, people say understand hearts and minds. Boy, when you read this book, you will understand hearts and minds because it uncovers their hearts and minds in a way that no other book out there does, no other study does. And in that way, it's very unique. And people have been very moved by the stories. People who fought in Iraq and in Afghanistan have written to me and said, these stories are amazing, Ken. I wish every American would read them so they understand why we're fighting, what we're fighting against, and maybe, just maybe, there's some hope to change that. So the book is just a totally different look at this world than anyone's ever given before. And you really only can read the book to understand what I mean by that.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I've read the book, and I recommend it to everybody, Terrorists in Love. And for those of you who want to watch a full discussion of Ken and I talking about this book, we're going to have a link right here if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're watching on Careers Out There, the video will be right below the one you're watching now. So, Ken, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Mark.